Aloha aina, ano ai, velina kako. Welcome to Free Hawaii News, brought to you by the Koani Foundation, presenting Hawaiian perspectives on a broad range of topics and issues affecting the Hawaiian Islands, the Pacific, and the world. Your hosts for Free Hawaii News are Leon Kaulahau-Siu, musician, composer, diplomat, and political analyst, and Hina Wong, Kumu filmmaker, cultural and Hawaiian language preservationist, and community leader. And now, Free Hawaii News.
Aloha ia mai o kou a e maluhia ho'i I ke akua, velina me ke aloha. Welcome to this episode of Free Hawaii News. We are glad you could join us. My name is Leon Kaulahau-Siu. I'm your host for today, and our co-host, Kumu Wong, is away on assignment. Probably the biggest issue today that is hiding below the radar is the issue of deep sea mining. While very few in Hawaii are even aware of it, it will have significant implications for everyone as well as huge impacts to Hawaii's ecological systems. Indigenous groups, especially in the South Pacific, are sounding the alarm over the new push to mine minerals at the bottom of the ocean. Major mining companies are now urging regulators to allow the process of scooping up mineral-rich rock hundreds to thousands of feet below the surface of the ocean. The United Nations International Seabed Authority is the body that would issue permits to do that. But those who live throughout Oceania are fighting the proposal, saying it will forever alter the fragile sea ecosystem and endanger the sea life they depend on for subsistence. To tell us more, we have with us in our studio Dr. Brittany Kamai, who is a Kanaka Maoli astrophysicist, a water wahine and ocean advocate, as well as the campaign organizer of Aoli deep sea mining. Aloha and welcome, Brittany.
Aloha. Mahalo for having me on today.
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Can you tell us briefly what is deep sea mining?
Yeah, well, the name says it all. It is this ambition to go to the bottom of the seafloor, and by bottom I mean about a mile down, so anywhere between 4,500 to 7,500 feet, to bring up these rocks that are called nodules that have minerals that are of interest to people who are looking for these metals to forward technology.
So why is this being called the world's next gold rush?
Oh, yes. It's because literally there is gold in it. Yes, so in the bottom of the seafloor, these nodules contain lithium, cobalt, gold, silver, and it is there's this interest that has no regulation on it yet. It's like this, it's like you're sitting on this edge of people wanting to just jump in and grab all of this. And people have already put price tags on what those nodules will look like. So they can look and see, oh, these rocks cost about trillions of dollars. And so it's just these, you can just see these dollar signs over people's heads trying to get there.
So even though deep sea mining is still illegal around the world, why are so many large mining companies waiting to get involved?
Yeah, I don't know if waiting is the right word.
Yeah, right.
Because mining companies are already moving forward with trying to figure out how to do it. And so what they do is they put in permits to different areas to see if they can go down to do research. And their research is really helping them develop the infrastructure to do the mining.
And the equipment.
Exactly. So it's like, okay, do I have the equipment that could go down and pull up these nodules and then bring it back onto my ship, and then can I bring it back and actually take out the minerals from them and make them useful? And so I wouldn't so much say waiting, because they're also the ones who are putting the permits in to the International Seabed Authority, which is the governing body from the United Nations, asking, and they're the ones who are basically driving things forward. So I wouldn't so much say that they're waiting. They're the ones who are kind of driving it forward to get down there.
Many indigenous peoples are opposed to the deep sea mining, especially island nations throughout Oceania. Can you tell us a little bit more about that opposition?
Yeah, I mean, like, as Indigenous people, we understand what it means to be in balance with nature. And so, like I said about this equation that is trying to be worked out right now of carbon emissions and carbon absorption, and oh yeah, we need to have less carbon emission by using all the metals. As Indigenous peoples, we're like, no, this is not the way that we're going to balance the planet by destroying the very things that are producing our oxygen. The ocean produces half of the oxygen we breathe. And it does that from the living organisms that are underwater. And our Indigenous wisdom and the ancestral knowledge that we have knows how intricate these systems are, right? You can't just like take out one little thing over here. And you can't just think about this in a land-based way where, oh yeah, I'll do this over here on this land and it's not going to interact with this over here.
You have to stir up a lot of the ocean bottom.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I don't know of any way that they can do that without causing a lot of clouds and dust, silt and that to be stirred up.
Yeah, and so that's the narrative of the driving narrative of the mining industry right now, is that they're saying we need to figure out what kind of rovers that we can send down there that would produce the least amount of sediment plumes as we pick up these nodules. And you completely went down that same road. It's like, how well could you possibly do that? We've all picked up a rock from the bottom of like a pond or the ocean and just seen what happened. And so I don't know what kind of fluid dynamics they think will happen at the bottom of the ocean that they can get around. It's still going to create a problem. And so as much as, and I don't think that people are hearing this enough, when the marine scientists are saying we don't understand, that is like such a strong statement, is that the web of life that's underwater is unbelievable. And so like, while you think you're picking up a rock, there are some organisms that only eat off of the rocks. And then there's some organisms that only eat out of the sediment. So if we think we can, maybe we'll pick up a rock here and pick up a rock here, you don't realize who you're hurting and then everything that eats from beyond that.
Why do you think it's important for Hawaiians to become involved, or should we?
Oh yeah, so in Hawaii, we have jurisdiction over 12 miles beyond the shores of our islands. And then in Hawaii, we're also embedded within the United States. And the United States has their economic zone that goes out 200 miles beyond our shores. And so being part of that conversation is critical. And connecting with our ohana in Oceania because of our ancestral ties, because they have seats at other tables, because they can talk in the international arena. So in the United Nations, for the International Seabed Authority, the United States isn't at that table. And so we need our ohana who is at other tables to be there. So the people in Hawaii, what we can do is we can say, no, let's not do this in the 12 miles around our islands. And then we can work within the federal government and be like, no, not in this economic zone. And then we can work with our ohana around Oceania to educate one another on how we can support like stopping this, but also lifting each other up in our economies, right? And that's how we need to like lift each other up in other types of ways. As Kanaka, like we are the ocean. Like our kupuna knew that from, if you compare the salinity of our teardrops, it's the same as the saltiness of the ocean, the same as the blood in our bloodstreams. All of our ancestral practices were going to the ocean. And we even have it in our cosmologies, right? Like in the Kumu, we come from the coral polyp. Like that's how wise our kupuna are to say that like we have a tie to the deepest ocean, right? As the building blocks before all of the gods, all of the creatures were part of the deep ocean. And as a voyager, you know, when we're navigating back home from the South Pacific, we use sea markers, right? We use the stars, we use the wind, we use the waves, but there's also marine life that we look for. And there's very distinct pockets of dolphins that are right in this region that you can rely on, and that's where you're gonna take a left to come home. So if you're trying to find Hawaii in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, like this is what you're gonna rely on. And those dolphins sit right over one of the regions that are of great interest for deep sea mining. And so from a spiritual perspective, is like the ocean is our kupuna, is our ancestor, and it is our responsibility to be with her, right? And she's calling us to take care of her.
What can our viewers do to help with this situation?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think like right now, it's the most critical piece is being aware, and the fact that you're here listening and learning this conversation, and then following that up with reading the literature. And listening, right? We had a rally in December at Ole Deep Sea Mining. Like, go back to watch those videos from our elders, like Nainoa or Archie Kalepa or Hina, like all of these beautiful voices who are talking about that we are the indigenous people of the sea, and this is our kuleana to do something. And whether or not you have it in your blood that you're a Pacific Islander, you are in Hawaii, right? Like, you took on the kuleana that you're going to take care of our aina and our kai and our moana. Every time you take a breath, remember that you're connected to the ocean, and then she's asking for you to pay attention to her.
Dr. Kamai, thank you so much for being here. One of the major lessons coming out of the devastating and tragic Lahaina fire of last August is the importance of local stewardship and control of our aina, our land, throughout Hawaii. As a result, the Lahaina Community Land Trust was created by local Lahaina residents to not only prevent future fires, but to also establish affordable housing for Lahaina's residents to enable them to stay and rebuild rather than move off island or out of Hawaii completely because they cannot afford current commercial housing prices as dictated by what many are calling a predatory capitalistic real estate market. To tell us a little bit more about the Lahaina Community Land Trust and how it works and the benefits of it, we now go to Maui, where Lahaina Community Land Trust President Tamara Paulton is standing by. Aloha, aloha mai, Tamara.
Thank you for having me on Free Hawaii News.
Could you please explain to us what a land trust is and what it does?
Land trusts are basically communally owned land ownership. It can be for the purpose of conservation, affordable housing, and even, a form of land back. But basically it's a organization or a group of people owning land and determining how it would be used.
Does the concept of a land trust align well with Hawaiian cultural values?
I think so. The idea of private or individual land ownership is, I think, a more foreign concept to traditional Hawaiian cultural values. So it has a little bit of alignment, I would say.
Was the Lahaina Community Land Trust created mainly to prevent outside for-profit investors from grabbing up land after the Lahaina fire?
I wouldn't say necessarily, it could also happen from inside Lahaina profit-driven investors grabbing land after the fire. It doesn't necessarily have to be from outside, but I think the main reason for the creation of the Lahaina Community Land Trust was to make an effort to preserve the character of our Lahaina community, the multi-generational families, lineal descendants, just kind of the way of life, Lahaina as a community has always been really proud of our high school athletes, as many other places in Hawaii are, and being being able to look out from Lahaina and see Molokai and Lanai, and we're kind of, right there, able to voyage through canoes, paddle to Molokai or Lanai, just those kind of facets of our community um, there was a real concern that people may not be able to hold on to their properties through the rebuild process. There was a lot of uncertainty. And so the idea came a little bit from that. Also there may be some folks that for whatever reason may be too traumatized to come back. And so it was just a idea of a way to preserve the character of our community in the face of uncertainty, when the way it was before the fire, already many families were having to struggle due to the inaffordability of housing in West Maui particularly.
Who is running the Lahaina Community Land Trust?
It's myself as the president, Carolyn Wong Auveloa as the and Kapali Keahi are also on the board. We have three voting board members. I'm looking to step down shortly because of my position with the Maui County Council. I don't want to have any conflicts of interest or hold the organization back from working with the county or hold myself back from voting. So we've identified Michael Lynn. She's also known as Mikey Burke, born and raised in Lahaina, and she's attended some of the workshop trainings with us. So I'll be stepping down shortly, and hopefully Mikey Burke will be taking my place. We're also looking into having a community advisory board who wouldn't have voting powers, but the board can bring issues or decisions to them just for advice, feedback, to kind of bounce ideas around. And we identified a number of people we'd like to ask to be a part of that community advisory board. We wanted to limit it to 9 so that it's easier to manage and have just a diverse group of people with really strong ties to Lahaina and a lot of connections, so that that board can then go reach out to their contacts, and we can try and get the best feedback on any issues or things that we need advice on.
Where are you getting the funds to purchase the lands for this land trust?
So far, it's been mostly private donors, maybe other organizations. We are in the process of pursuing some grants. Really, there's a whole world of philanthropy focused on community-owned land, both for conservation and affordable housing, and also social justice and land back. We've had about 4 pretty large donations from other types of organizations so far, and then a number of smaller, just private donations from just individual members of the community. Each time one of our members do interviews, we usually have a good response. So word is spreading of what we're trying to achieve.
Will those who choose to sell their land to the land trust get a market price for their land?
That's our goal. One thing that we learned in one of the workshops that we were in about land trusts is that nonprofit land trusts are restricted to paying only the appraised price for parcels. So we can't, if the market can bear more than what the appraised price is, we're not really allowed to get into a bidding war or anything of that sort. We are looking into legal, creative ways to use leasebacks and easements to get folks the support they need to stay on their land to the extent that the resources we have would allow. Although the county is working at an expedited permit process, it may not apply to those in the SMA area, the historic district, the flood zone. They still will need to get those types of certifications, which could take longer. So perhaps we could lease their land for 3 years or however long it might take to get them to the rebuild process. And in that way, enable different families to be able to stay on their land or have, something where we're not able to pay market rate, but it would have a buyback clause where, in 10 years you come back and you can have your land back for the same amount of money that we gave to you or work something out. We're trying to explore all options. Of course, our goal is to try and keep as many Lahaina families in Lahaina. Our goal is not to accumulate a bunch of people's land. It's just to try and keep our community together, the character of our community um together. So that's kind of the place we're coming from, not that we want to buy up all the land or even have any ideas that it's a possibility we can buy all the land that's for sale.
Why hasn't a land trust been set up years ago before the August 8th fire?
Maui does have a few land trust organizations. There's Nahale o Maui or Hawaiian Island Land Trust. Nahale o Maui focuses on affordable housing in perpetuity. Hawaiian Islands Land Trust mostly focuses on conservation lands. We haven't seen one focused on trying to preserve community character before, but we've never had a situation like the August 8th fire hit a whole town like this before. Um, but I mean, it still has been an issue with being priced out of paradise and whatnot. So I think, maybe it is a lot of work to set up a land trust, and maybe the appetite for community-owned land wasn't as prevalent before. So we're just building on the momentum of the situation of the love that's been expressed for Lahaina to try and harness it into a way to keep the character of our community throughout this disaster period.
What does it take to set up a land trust?
First, for us, what we did was we started out with a lot of research. One of our community partners who actually lives in South Maui right now, before we even went very far with the actual setting up of the land trust, she reached out to land trusts from across the nation and across the globe of how the various structures of land trusts could be and like what reasons they were created. And we found that a lot of times land trusts are started as a result of a disaster. We ended up hooking up with a strategist who offered to help us when we said, if you have any kind of specialties or talents that could help us, please feel free to reach out. And she ended up reaching out, got a team together to give us like a workshop on fundraising, a workshop on how to run a nonprofit, a workshop on land trust law and all sorts of things. And so we're just, kind of learning as we go along and just a lot dependent on the goodwill of those who've done it before and are willing to help us succeed.
Are there any downsides to a land trust?
If you're a profit-driven entity or individual that looks at land as a commodity or a tool to build wealth, yes, because that's not what we're here for.
Can residents on other parts of Maui set up various land trusts?
They can if they have the people and resources to make it happen. I mean, for us, it started out with filing our nonprofit paperwork, but we're also looking into getting resources such as help from lawyers and brokers and others with that specialty of land exchange and how to hold land and things like that. But it all starts with a dream, and then you follow it up with hard work and a solid crew of people that you can trust. But anybody can do it.
Will a land trust enable the restoration of indigenous stewardship to certain lands?
This is one of our major goals. It there's a lot of factors that it depends on. There's some bills going through the state right this moment that, how do I say this? They would take the decision-making authority out of the local community and put it more in a Oahu chosen group's hands. And so we're trying to as politely as possible say no thank you. We want to be involved in our own self-determination locally with the multi-generational voices of Lahaina and not just one seat at the table, but basically all the seats at the table. So that's the goal that we're working towards, but there are many variables in play at the moment and a lot of uncertainty, but that is our commitment to work towards restoration of indigenous stewardship of Lahaina lands.
Since land trusts protect lands from predatory foreign investors and disaster capitalists, wouldn't it be a good idea for multiple land trusts to be created on each island?
I don't think that's a bad idea. Just drawing on my history of knowledge of land trusts, I recall that Hawaiian Islands Land Trust used to be called Maui Coastal Land Trust or something like that. And they decided to branch out and become a statewide land trust. So it's definitely a choice to consider whether you want different land trusts for each district or island or county or one for the whole state. There is some benefits to pooling your resources in that way. But then when it comes to raising money, I think each area would want to keep their fundraising efforts for their local area. So, I mean, it could be done either way, where there's one overarching or umbrella land trust for the state with individual chapters, or it just depends. I think it's all a conversation and a series of conversations and relationships with people in this field of how specifically they envision moving forward. But it's a possibility to make each island have one or each district have one. The only thing is having the people and the resources to keep it going.
Is the Lahaina Community Land Trust a temporary means to protect land, or do you see it as a long-term solution?
This was needed before the fire because of all the speculation raising the prices of land in West Maui. And so we don't envision going back to that type of situation if possible.
Mahalo nui Tamara for your mana'o on Free Hawaii News. One of our regular features on Free Hawaii News is a discussion between Hina and me called The Pacific Way. It's about looking at topics of concern from a Pacific Islander perspective. What is the Pacific viewpoint? What's behind that viewpoint? And how does it affect how we do things and how we live? How does the Pacific Way differ from the Western Way, which has become the most influential economic and social system around the world? Some call it the legacy of colonialism. A recent UN resolution calls it the negative legacy of colonialism. The world under the system of neocolonialism is beginning to implode. The world today is in crisis and on the brink of a catastrophic collapse on many fronts. Crises caused by reckless commercial pursuits of the Western Way. In Hawaii, this is where the Pacific Way comes in. With the rising of awareness of great traditions of indigenous peoples, their knowledge, wisdom, social structures, and practices that often reach back thousands of years. People have begun to awaken to the profound values of ancient knowledge and traditional practices that could provide the answers to the grave issues facing the world today. Now, what if we were to apply the Pacific Way, or more specifically, the Hawaiian Way, to issues such as caring for people, malama i ka poʻe, for land management, malama aina, and for caring for our ocean, malama i ke kai, and caring for the planet, malama honua. All of that encompasses food resources, housing, sustainability, sea level rise, and climate change. Many are realizing that Pacific Islanders have a way of relating to our surroundings that has sustained, nurtured, and caused us to thrive on tiny specks of land scattered over a vast ocean covering a third of the globe, a great ocean-going people who thrived on little specks of land. For many years, the people of Hawaii have been suffering from a severe housing crisis. In recent years, so many people have left Hawaii that the 2020 U.S. Census showed of the total number of Native Hawaiians living in Hawaii and the continental U.S., more than 50% now live on the continental U.S., and that is just Native Hawaiians. What about all the other people of the Hawaiian Islands, those of other ethnicities who were born here or otherwise came to call Hawaii their homeland? If we were able to count them, I think we would come up with at least the same ratio or of less than 50% living in Hawaii, and the rest in diaspora, not only in the U.S., but all over the globe. In a conversation I had with the Kiribati ambassador to the UN a few years ago, he said, "What if our goal as leaders is not to just provide a way for people to afford to live, but to provide the conditions to make people happy and at peace with one another, to thrive and to see life pursuits not as a series of win-lose encounters or even win-win events, but as happy opportunities." Think about it. Instead of win-lose or even win-win, the platform is competition. But in happy, aloha, caring for the other, becomes the platform. Now, the Lahaina fire has exposed how severe the problems are in Hawaii, especially the housing problem. As discussions about recovery proceed, the people of Maui and Lahaina in particular have stepped forward to assert control of their aina and their futures after the fires. They are insisting that the business as usual model of profits over people will no longer be tolerated. The conversation is leaning heavily toward the Pacific way of thinking, encouraging and supporting local residents to step forward into roles of responsibility of any size, small, medium, or large, to let the U.S. occupiers of Hawaii, especially the real estate developers and government agencies, know that going forward, decisions must be made from the ground up, and local residents in their local areas must be the ones to decide their own futures. Changing from the profit mode of make as much money as you can, as fast as you can, which has been the style of business and governance for the past 150 years in Hawaii, is beginning to change to the Pacific way, prioritizing malama i ka poʻe, care for the people, malama i ka aina, care for the land, and malama i ke kai, care for the ocean, keeping things in pono, in proper balance, making these principles of how business and government is conducted and how life is lived in our islands. King Kamehameha III said it best, "Ua mau ke ea o ka aina i ka pono." The life or sovereignty of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. That is the Hawaiian and the Pacific way. Even though it hasn't been in the news much lately, contamination of Oahu's drinking water is still a very serious and present issue. There are many instances of adults and children, even infants, who are getting sick from drinking tap water as well as bathing in it, and ending up in the hospital with serious health conditions. Those who have suffered serious health problems include both U.S. Navy families as well as civilian residents of Oahu. What will it take to finally get clean and safe drinking water for everyone? To fill us in on all of this and how safe our water supply really is, we have with us in the studio Summer Lee Yadao, who is one of the Na Kiai o Waiha water protectors from EWA. Aloha and welcome, Summer.
Mahalo.
The reports are that despite the water lines being flushed in 2022, that the drinking water, especially for families of the U.S. Navy stationed there at Pearl Harbor, is still contaminated. So Summer, what can you tell us about this?
Well, I actually have some friends that live in the Kapilina housing development, and they are still being provided with water and being told by, I'm not sure who, but being told that they shouldn't use the water for drinking or cooking still. So they have regular water drop-offs, and people are still wary of using the water for, consumption.
So what can you tell us about the water in the state of Hawaii as far as the state of Hawaii? The Department of Health or the Environmental Protection Agency or the U.S. Navy, what are they saying about the water?
They are trying to make sure that nobody has, freaks out or anything and doesn't want to use it or, cause extra problems for them. But as far as us as citizens and people who are using the water, it's wise to be wary and to take precautions, because as we've seen, it has health risks using the water.
Are these state and federal agencies actually saying it's not healthy to drink, or are they saying it is?
They're saying that it is now, because they're starting to do cleanup, and like I said before, they want to paint a better picture usually than what is actually happening, so that people don't try to go against them or make a big fuss, so that they want to placate everyone. But as far as the citizens are concerned, the military families and all the regular population, they're just not ready to believe them. From what we've seen in Waiau, there's contamination there also, and then we have this threat of a second wave pool being built in EWA in Kalailoa, which will also have some effect of our water supply. So there seems to be a lot of concerns when it comes to our water.
How would that wave pool affect the contamination of water?
Well, it has plans to, of course, dig under the ground, and we have a really complex karst system where water flows and goes out into the ocean, actually, where we have a lot of limu and different types of limu there in EWA. So, what happens on land happens to the water, and it goes from, Mauka to Makai, and it's fresh and ocean water. Contamination to water is really hard to say it's 100% okay to use, because it's water. It spreads, and it doesn't just stay in one spot. So to say that it's 100% okay, I don't know if I would believe. Yeah.
So what do you think it will take to get the water clean again, so that we can safely use the water? What is it going to take?
I think a lot of innovative thinking. I know that they're doing some kind of project in the Alawai to clean that up with those microbe balls that they use. I've heard also with mushrooms, like they have certain mushrooms that can clean up water and even eat plastics. So looking at different, innovative ways that aren't using chemicals or other things like that might be something we can do. But also starting from the beginning, right? Our water comes from the rain. So if we bring back our rainforests, then eventually over time, we'll have our water system good again.
What actions and plans are the Oahu water protectors taking to ensure the water will be clean again?
Making sure that the military and others are taking steps towards the cleanup. I think right now there are faces in the room that are able to hold them accountable to make sure that that happens.
And what why are we having to fight so hard to just get some results here, or to get information and also results?
It's been shown even throughout history with us here in Hawaii and military presence, even when it comes to Makua Valley and Kaho'olawe, they're not really into their cleanups. They're more about doing what they want to do, and then the cleanup is left for us to take care of. So I think now, though, because we have social media, we have ways of getting the word out there more. We have more eyes on situations that we can hold them accountable to not stop until they do what they say they're going to do and what we actually need them to do for us to be healthy and live fruitful lives.
Mm-hmm. I understand actually by law they are responsible for making this cleanup. I think the state of Hawaii has just been remiss in forcing or in insisting that the Navy or other military installations really clean up what the messes they made. Yeah. What can you tell us about the numerous lawsuits that have been filed against the U.S. federal government over this contamination?
There are several, and even throughout the country, because of contaminations that has happened with the military and others, like different businesses. So I think there's just more awareness that we cannot just do anything that we want to do. We have to look at what is happening, the damage that it could do, and then take preemptive measures to stop it so that we don't have to get into these lawsuits. So do the right thing the first time and think of what the impacts of what you're doing. Even though this is really a bad situation, it has brought military families and civilian families, local families together to go against this situation that affects all of us, right? So unless we come together and stand up for our well-being and our humanity, then we're all not gonna be okay. So we should band together, realize that we're all one human family that needs water, clean food, homes, and then all of us will be better for it.
Mahalo. Thank you so much for coming today, Ms. Summer.
Mahalo.
It's really been eye-opening, and thank you for your work that you do. What about Hawaii at the UN? Hawaiians have been significant participators and contributors to various UN bodies since the 1970s, 50 years. Ke Aupuni o Hawaii and the Koani Foundation have been active at the UN for over 20 years. During that time, I have personally traveled to the UN in Geneva over 30 times and to New York even more. Although we have filed numerous formal complaints and petitions, our foreign relations strategy has been primarily a public relations strategy, attending meetings, making connections, telling our story, making friends, being positive and consistent in our advocacy. This type of relationship and credibility building requires time to develop, but in the long run, it's proving to be an effective way to achieve our goal of restoring the Hawaiian Kingdom. We are using the path that has been open to us, the UN's mechanisms based in Geneva as well as in New York. We are petitioning 5 main mechanisms of the United Nations. In Geneva, the Human Rights Council and the Human Rights Committee. In New York, the 4th Committee, the Decolonization Committee, and the UN General Assembly. There are 5 main reasons we are involved with the United Nations. 1, to make certain that UN members, agencies, and organisms are aware of the United States' flagrant violations of the UN Charter, UN mandates, and international law with regard to the people of Hawaii and the Hawaiian Islands. Number 2, to urge the UN General Assembly to review its Resolution 1469 to discover the procedural error in its adoption and to rescind that resolution. Number 3, to convince the UN General Assembly to censure the U.S. for violations of UN mandates with respect to Hawaii and to cause the U.S. to concede Hawaii's right to assert its independence. Number 4, to enlist the help of the UN and member states to support a treaty of peace between the Hawaiian Kingdom and the U.S., and to request their aid in rebuilding our nation and the resumption of diplomatic relations. And number 5, to partner with and assist other unrepresented nations and peoples with aspirations for independence. That is, we're trying to help one another out here. We are not at the UN to seek recognition from or to join the UN. We are at the UN to petition the UN to bring one of its key members, the United States of America, into compliance with UN mandates and international laws regarding wrongful actions against Hawaii and its people. We are there to urge UN member states and the international community to put pressure on the UN system to stop supporting the United States' fraudulent claims to Hawaii. Our primary activities thus far has been to open the eyes of the international community to the situation in Hawaii, the wrongful occupation of our country by the United States. We have succeeded in raising that awareness. Lately, international press coverage and stories about Hawaii invariably refer to the illegal occupation. In 2018, a memorandum was issued by Geneva-based Dr. Alfred M. Desaias, the UN independent expert for democratic international order. He stated the following, quote, "I have come to understand that the lawful political status of the Hawaiian Islands is that of a sovereign nation state under a strange form of occupation by the United States, resulting from an illegal military occupation and a fraudulent annexation," unquote. As a result of this and growing awareness and understanding, several UN member states are preparing a petition to the UN General Assembly concerning the UN's role in enabling the United States' false claim to the Hawaiian Islands. We are on the verge of a major breakthrough in our long journey to free Hawaii. We come now to one of our most popular segments of Free Hawaii News, Kumu Hina's Mana'o. Aloha Hina.
Aloha Leon. Aloha mai kako. This is Kumu Hina here, and I must apologize to you, Leon, e kala mai ia'u, and to all of the viewers who are tuning in to this broadcast. I did not get a chance to be in studio today with Leon because I am taking care of Kuleana. That is, at least in my understanding, as Kanaka, it is the most important of Kuleana that we should all be conscious of, we should all be aware of. Kulana and Kuleana. If I summarized my days according to these two words, Kulana and Kuleana. Kulana, one's role, one's rank, a status, a place, a position, one's title or one's job. One's Kuleana, when one knows where one stands and one knows what one's role is, then one can know the Kuleana, the duty, the obligation, and the responsibility, the charge or the task that comes with it. So Again, kulana and kuleana, role and responsibility. As my mother's only child, it is my kulana and my kuleana to make sure that I look after my mother. And when there are days when I need to pay more attention to her or pay more attention to her needs, and when it comes to needing to prioritize that, that is what I have to do. And life could be crumbling down around me, and other things would have been scheduled, other things would have been planned for, but um, I made a commitment to my kulana, which is my role as my mother's only child, and I made my commitments to my kuleana, the duties that I am responsible for. So, I talk about this because we, as Kanaka, we often hear the word kuleana, but sometimes I come across moments where kuleana is spoken about, but people don't really know their kuleana because they don't know their role, and people overstep their role. People don't even know what their role is to help define and determine what exactly is their charge, what exactly is their duty or responsibility to any given moment, any given space and time. So, again, that's why in these past couple of days, I've needed to prioritize mom and mom's health. I've needed to make sure that I was where I am needed and most required because I'm the one responsible for my mother. Again, as my mother's only child, and with the responsibility of caring for my mother, that's part and parcel of still having parents who are alive. And, well, it is our duty. In the world of being Kanaka, it's not anybody else's responsibility. We don't do what foreigners tend to do, Western foreigners. I know this is a common occurrence in America, but in Asia and the Pacific, especially here in Hawaii, it is most important that when our elders, whether they be our grandparents or our parents, when they get to an age or when they get to a particular point in life that they may not be able to sustain their living on their own, they may not be able to be completely independent, they might need more care and attention, their health might require more visits to the doctor or whatever it is that they need. It's nobody else's kuleana to take that on. And, well, for me personally, I could not see myself trying to pass on the charge of caring for my mother when I'm perfectly capable of doing that. And if there was any merit, any value to my name personally, and the ethics that I do my best to adhere to, then I have to do my best to be conscious about, I guess, put my how do I say it? What's the English phrase? Well, maybe that's not the best thing to say. Put your money where your mouth is, but the proof is in the pudding. All of these English euphemisms, is that what they're called? Um, it's it's better to just show through action. Makahana ka ike, malaila no ka vaivai o kaume olalawai. Your words have no meaning unless you bring it to life and enable it and put it into action. So if Kumuhina is known for aspiring and espousing things Kanaka, then Kumuhina has to be conscious that, well, sometimes you have to take off Kumuhina hat and you have to be Hinale Moana, and you have to, well, I have to make sure that I prioritize mom. And therefore, I encourage all of you Kanaka out there, and even if you're not Kanaka, you might be other Kama'aina, you might be Malihini Haole, whether you're living here in Hawaii, in my mainland, or whether you're living in America or abroad. Wherever it is that you are, I encourage you all. Don't be too quick to run to just toss your makua, toss your parents or your grandparents off to somebody else because it's convenient or because you can't. I find it difficult to believe that you just can't. It's either you won't endeavor to find a way, you won't endeavor to make adjustments and to perhaps shift gears in your life to make it work. But I encourage you, especially if you're kanaka out there, we can't just talk about kuleana. We must remember kulana and kuleana. The role that we are in, the role that we fulfill, requires us to carry certain duties and responsibilities. No laila in hoa aloha aina, o wau no keia, o hina le moana. Giving you not only my aloha, but reminding you that our role and responsibility, we wear many hats, and there are many duties and responsibilities that come with each of those hats. So I'm not in studio today, but I get to share this time and this mana'o with you. No laila, ke aloha nui a oko, mahalo nui ke hui ana, ahui ho, aloha.
Mahalo nui for watching this episode of Free Hawaii News. On behalf of our guests and our crew, malama pono, ahui ho aku, aloha.
We hope you enjoyed this month's episode of Free Hawaii News. Mahalo for watching. There's a new show every month, so this program will air several more times this month. You can view it anytime on Olelo's on-demand site or on YouTube. See you next time. Ahui ho, aloha aina.
The Free Hawaii Broadcasting Network.